I'm part of the East, I'm part of the South, I'm part of the West, I'm universal. I'm India.
I end every discussion at home about war and democracy and why it matters. You got China who's trying to shut down everything close to democracy, and India, you're moving forward, you're having elections, you got your problems like we do at home, but you've chosen the democratic path.
When it comes to Kashmir, I don't know how it ends, but let's make sure that two democracies will end it differently.
Don't worry, Senator, one democracy will settle it. And you know which one.
A complete failure of a rogue nation who happens to be a nuclear power and unfortunate neighbor of us will be an asset to us or failure, or a liability to us. Sorry.
It is a reality to us, not a...
I would like to see one person who feels that we should not have responded to more. Everybody in the country felt it. अगले NSA जो UPA के NSA थे, उन्होंने कहा कि this minister looked at it, that minister looked at it, सब लोग मिले, बहुत analyze किया, वो plus minus देखा, फिर हमने decide किया that the cost of attacking Pakistan is more than the cost of not attacking Pakistan. Something like Mumbai happens, and if you do not react to it, how can you prevent the next one from happening? And उनको ये नहीं लगना चाहिए कि भाई हम इस लाइन के उस पार हैं तो कोई हमें छुएगा नहीं. Terrorists do not play by any rules. The answer to terrorists cannot have any rules.
Of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine into the rest of the world, the East, the global South, say in 1991 pre-liberalization when India could afford to stand by non-alignment as it was defined then. I think a lot of critics would ask you the increase in your oil imports is 9 times higher as of this month. Is that profiteering? Is that looking out for your own interest? What does that really mean for foreign policy in India?
I mean, today Europe is buying oil. Europe is buying gas. I just read the new package of sanctions. Pipelines have a certain carve-out. Timelines have been given. It's not like tomorrow morning everything's going to be cut off. People need to understand, if you can be considerate of yourself, surely you can be considerate of other people. That freedom or that choice should exist for other people as well. Now, in terms of our oil purchases, we don't send people out there saying go buy Russian oil. We send people out there saying go buy oil. Now, you buy the best oil you can in the market.
I know the Indian-Russian relationship is strong, but you also have issues with China. How do you then sit back and define Indian foreign policy at this point where by purchasing this oil for national interest, India is being asked, are you funding this war?
I don't want to sound argumentative, but then tell me if buying Russian gas is not funding the war? I mean, why is it's only Indian money and oil coming to India which funds, but it's not gas coming to Europe which funds? You know, look the whole narrative that it's gone up 9 times. I mean, it's gone up 9 times from a very low base, and it was a very low base because at that time the markets were more open. You know, why if countries in Europe and the West and the United States are so concerned, why don't they allow Iranian oil to come into the market? Why don't they allow Venezuelan oil to come into the market? I mean, they've squeezed every other source of oil we have and then say, okay guys, you must not go into the market and get the best deal for your people. I don't think that's a very fair approach.
Issues with allowing Ukrainian grains to be exported. But by India doing the same, again, aren't those weakest people in the world being subjected to the same kind of issues from India? Do you see that as supporting Russia, or is it a completely different element that we don't understand in the West, that your perspective is different?
I think answer is B. You don't understand in the West. But it isn't just the West. We have been exporting wheat, okay? Typically, we export about 2 to 3 million tons. Last financial year was a better year. We exported about 7 million tons. But what we then saw was a kind of run on our wheat. A large part of it done by international traders based out of Singapore and I think to some degree maybe Dubai. The low-income countries, many of whom were our traditional buyers, like our neighbors, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. These are our traditional buyers. Okay, interestingly, the Gulf buys regularly from us. I heard Dr. Tedros in the earlier session talk about Yemen. Yemen buys from us. Sudan buys from us. Now, what we saw was the low-income buyers were being squeezed out. The wheat was actually being stocked for being traded. So, in a way, our goodwill was being used for speculation. So we had to do something to stop that. Because it was also impacting us at home. Our prices were going up. So I want to be very clear what we have done. We have actually said, look, we're not going to give speculators an open access to the Indian market. We've done this year wheat exports to about 23 countries.
A conduit to any Russian oil transaction.
Listen, please understand the oil markets. There's an enormous shortage of oil. There's a physical shortage of oil. Getting access to oil is difficult. A country like India would be crazy to get oil from somebody and sell it to somebody else. This is nonsense.
India counting on global support for in its struggle with China, its issues with China. How do you think you'll be trusted by others after that? Why do you think anyone will help Delhi after you didn't help others over Ukraine? Thank you.
It's an interesting question which you might, not you, meaning you personally, but people might want to ask themselves, because if I were to take Europe collectively, which has been singularly silent on many things which were happening, for example, in Asia, you could ask, why would anybody in Asia trust Europe on anything at all? I think you're mischaracterizing our position. Ukraine conflict, our position is very clearly that we favor an immediate cessation of hostilities. It's not that we've ignored it, unless you call phone calls to Putin and Zelensky as ignoring something. So first, I would urge you to get the factual position accurately. We have a difficult relationship with China. We're perfectly capable of managing it. If I get global understanding and support, obviously it is of help to me. But this idea that I do a transaction, that I come in one conflict because it will help me in conflict too, that's not how the world works. A lot of our problems in China have nothing to do with Ukraine, have nothing to do with Russia. They predate it. We are getting into who is silent on what issue at what point of time. I could point to a whole lot of issues on which, as I said, Europe has held its peace. It's a great polemical point you made. So I take it in that spirit.
You have a problem with China decades now. It is getting worse. What position does that leave you in when it comes to seeking support if further incursions are done, further skirmishes happen at the border or within the border, to kind of echo what's happening in Ukraine in terms of sovereignty issues that are being raised? And one of the foremost geopolitical strategists on Wall Street sent me this question for you. And the question is simple. If and when the choice comes down to it, not today, not tomorrow, but in the future, and she strongly believes it will, for India, will it become, in terms of support, the US or China? And that will be kind of a defining moment that comes out of the situation that we face with Russia right now.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems. There is a linkage today which is being made. Linkage between China and India and what's happening in Ukraine. So come on, guys. China and India happened way before anything happened in Ukraine.
Always be two axes. At this point, I think it's an understood, accepted fact that you have the West, US-led, you have China as the next potential axis. Where does India fit into this? But are you planning to not pick a side?
No, I'm sorry. That is exactly where I disagree with you. This is the construct you are trying to impose on me, and I don't accept it. I don't think it's necessary for me to join this axis or not, and if I'm not joining this, I must be with the other one. I don't accept it. I think I'm 1/5 of the world's population. I am today the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. Forget the history, civilization bit, everybody knows that. But I think I'm entitled to have my own side. I'm entitled to weigh my own interests, make my own choices. And my choices will not be cynical and transactional, but they will be a balance of my values and my interests. There is no country in the world which disregards its interests.
What will or what is India's position on the world stage? Because if you want to talk about 1/5 of the world's population, you cannot also sit on the fence when it comes to foreign policy matters. Non-alignment isn't plausible if you want to take your position on the world stage. What is India's position? Sitting on the fence is not an option to be a world leader.
I don't think we're sitting on the fence. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't make me sitting on the fence. It means I'm sitting on my ground. And my ground is actually, what are the big challenges of the world? Okay, big challenges of the world are climate change. I think I'm very critical to the solution. I can be an exemplar. I can be actually an arena for an enormous leapfrogging of green technologies. Look at terrorism. Look at the emergence of a world order. Look at security. Look at sustainable development goals. I mean, you take any and all of the big challenges of the world, some part of the answer either comes out of India, can be contributed to India. And again, I hate to say, it's a bit like a broken record, but look, a lot of things are happening outside Europe. The days when they expected Europe to come, which Europe did at the 2004 tsunami. The difference today is nobody's even thinking of that anymore. So the world is changing, new players are coming, new capabilities are coming, but a new agenda must come. The world cannot be that Eurocentric as it used to be in the past.
And who will India play with? Will it be Europe and the US, or will it be China and Russia?
Look, they're not exclusionary, but we are a democracy. We are a market economy. We are a pluralistic society. We have laws and contracts. We have positions on international law. So again, I urge you that don't use necessarily a caricature version of one situation as a yardstick to pass a sweeping judgment. Because even on Ukraine, do reflect on this point. Somewhere at some point, surely the conflict has to end. Somebody will have to, a set of people, it cannot be a single country, probably not, will have to engage the players. It is our collective interest to find some kind of resolution, unless you're throwing up your hands and say this is not fixable.
We do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security. But I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon.
But is this a complicated situation? Is this really complicated? There's just one big country invading its neighbor.
No, look, I can give you many instances of countries who have violated the sovereignty of another country. If I were to ask where Europe stood on a lot of those, I'm afraid I'll get a long silence.
Well, you still buy Russian oil. Is that okay with your counterpart from the US? Everything is, your relationship is fine, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want?
Your question, do we have multiple options? Answer is yes. Is that a problem? Why should it be a problem? If I'm smart enough to have multiple options, you should be admiring me. You shouldn't be criticizing me. Now, is that a problem for other people? I don't think so. I don't think so, certainly in this case. And in that case, different countries and different relationships have different histories. Between the US and Germany, it is rooted, there's an alliance nature to it. There's a certain history on which that relationship is grounded. In our case, it's very different. We get along with people, we believe in things, we share things, we agree on some things, but there are times when, when you're located in different places, have different levels of development. So I agree very much with what Tony said, which is good partners provide choices. Smart partners take some of those choices. But sometimes there will be choices on which you say, well, I think I'll pass up on that one.